You guys know I like catchphrases, but what you're talking about is conduct that is detrimental. And that's a term that's used often in our business, and appropriately so. Because in this COVID environment, if you're not exercising discretion and being thoughtful about how you move, that conduct is detrimental to your cause and to ours collectively. And so that's the messaging that I'm delivering to those guys. We got to conduct ourselves accordingly. There's been a lot of work to position ourselves to be where we are right now. It's one fail, all fail in this environment. And so we're going to continue to package the messaging that way and be very transparent. It is that. It's conduct detrimental to their efforts and ours.
Well
Steelers
said.
coach Mike Tomlin from earlier in camp, Chris. And look at it this way. The Steelers had no one opt out. They've had no one on the COVID-19 reserve list. They waited until July 28 to let anyone in the building. They were taking the full time to get it ready. They're practicing out of Heinz Field, where they have 4 locker rooms that they can use to spread their players out. Watch week 1. I guarantee you they're going to travel same day to play the Giants like they did 8 years ago when they couldn't get a hotel because of Hurricane Sandy. They're going to travel same day. They're going to take care of business. They're going to come home. They're going to continue to keep everything as tight and protected as they can. This is an opportunity for Mike Tomlin to reconfirm why he's one of the best coaches in the NFL.
Yeah.
And he's gotten his guys committed and believing in that full season sacrifice you need to make in order to master this challenge of not letting the pandemic get into your building.
No doubt. Well, I mean, there's you could argue he's the best at messaging in the NFL. He's one of the best at messaging I've ever been around. Just all you got to do is listen to those comments there. I mean, he just, the way he always lays it out on a daily basis, I've always been impressed with Mike Tomlin that way. Even in just normal conversations, like me and him man to man, seeing him at the owners meeting or something like that. Like some of the things he'll say to me, I'm just like, man, that was well said, or that was really eloquent with the words there and made a lot of sense. It hits hard. It hits home that way. And that Steelers team, as you know, Mike, they got a lot of alphas on that team, a lot. And that is a team where I feel like if you're a young guy and you're messing around and going to mess up their season, they will set you straight in a hurry. And within those alphas too, hey, yeah, we've had the Antonio Browns and some guys that you go, damn, he's a pain in the butt. But they've got guys that love football there in Pittsburgh too. And that's why I think you see alphas love football, love to hit, love the attitude of it, and that's why they have no opt-outs. And, they're one of those teams I look at and we both, I think, go watch out for them this year.
I think the crowning achievement of Mike Tomlin's coaching career will end up being the fact that he was able to keep Antonio Brown from having the implosion that we've seen over the last 18 months in the 10 years that they were together in Pittsburgh, getting the most out of AB's talents. Ben Roethlisberger back. He is now entering year 17 as the Steelers starter. Missed most of last year with that elbow problem. I still am concerned, and the reason we're talking about the Steelers are number 11 on our preseason power rankings. We're working our way to the top. We've got 10 left. The Steelers right on the fringes of the top 10. They could end up being really good this year. One of the key ingredients will be whether or not Roethlisberger is, number 1, recovered from the elbow injury, and Chris, number 2, whether or not last year was just the first thing to go bad on a car that's in the process of breaking down. That's my concern. Okay, the elbow went, and the elbow's fixed, and that's all well and good. But what about the knee? What about the hip? What about the shoulder? What about every other body part that has taken a beating on this guy for 2 reasons? Number 1, he takes a lot of physical abuse when he's on the field.
Yeah.
Number 2, when you are carrying around more weight than you should, every day you get out of bed and walk around and move around and run and do anything is putting more stress and pressure on those body parts. And after you've done it for all these years, it may be time for things to break down. That's my big concern, that the elbow wasn't the end, that the elbow was just the beginning.
Hey, Big Ben, Mike Florio's concerned about your weight. He's just so you know, he's just a little concerned about your weight.
He's lost weight.
He's calling you overweight,
no.
Big Ben.
No, I'm not. Wait a minute. No, he was.
I know. I got you.
He's a large man.
He is. He is a large man. You're right. I mean, he's one of those guys that if he had a bad weekend and ate too many Roethlisberger sandwiches there in Pittsburgh or whatever, he could probably put on 8 or 10 pounds. He is a naturally really big guy. But I those concerns you talk about, yeah, I'm worried about them too. You're right. It's been a physical brand of football over a long career. Now, I really think, though, just as far as the quarterback play, being able to throw the football, all of that, I expect to see the old Big Ben. I do. I don't think he's past his prime yet. To me, he looked good last year. Obviously, he just had the issue of the elbow, but I didn't sit there and go, "Ooh, this doesn't look the same." I know they didn't start off great, but I still saw, popping the ball and a guy that could still thread the needle and do all of those things. So it's good they got him back. And really, in Pittsburgh, the offense is the question, right, Mike? I mean, that's the question. Who are the receivers that are going to help Big Ben out? Who's going to rise? Who's going to be the cream of the crop there? Does a James Washington take the next step? Does a Deontay Johnson take the next step to help out a Juju Smith-Schuster? Does my man Chase Claypool, who I think could be a superstar, can he do it here in year one? Those are the questions we have. And then the running game. I mean, really, we don't even have to talk about the defense. The defense is special. But those are my biggest concerns about them going forward. I don't know how you feel about that.
No, look, hey, last year they didn't have Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown, or Le'Veon Bell, and it showed. They still almost got to the playoffs without those guys. James Conner took a step back. We had the draft last week of the guys who need a hot start most in the NFL. James Conner needs one, or he's going to be on the bench for Benny Snell or Anthony McFarland Jr. and Jalen Samuels, a nice change of pace guy that's going to get his opportunities. The receiver position, and let's start there because we've got different position groups, and we're going to rank them whether they're in the top third of the league, the middle third of the league, or the bottom third of the league. Let's start with the receivers, and this one's the easiest for me. You got to put them in the bottom third right now because too many guys are unproven. Last year, they tried to make Juju Smith-Schuster into a number one. He's not a number one. He's a great number two. He's not a number one because he can't stretch the field. And it showed in his production last year. You double him, you can take him away, and then you can focus on the other guys, and none of the other guys stepped up enough. Now, look, without Ben Roethlisberger there, it's hard to tell where they would have.
Right.
But all things taken together, I think that receiving core has the potential to get much better this year, but somebody's got to step up. It can't be like it was last year. Somebody's got to fill the shoes that were vacated by Antonio Brown when he went into the cryogenic chamber without shoes on last year, and that started his spiral downward in Oakland. But, so I think for now they're bottom third, and I think that's a fair – somebody's got to be.
No, I hear you.
I think that's a fair assessment of where they are.
Yeah, I don't think you're crazy to say – I don't know if I would say bottom third. I think I probably would maybe say the middle third, I guess is where I would go. I understand.
Yeah, just like you have 20 top 10 receivers. If you started listing the receiving cores – you would run out of spots before you got to the Steelers.
Yeah, well, again, I don't know if we saw, exactly what the receivers are, to your point, with no Big Ben there, okay? So I think James Washington, he showed me some moments last year on, oh, damn, I mean, he kind of starting to look dangerous. And Deontay Johnson that way too. And also just with the receiving core, and I know this is not within the spirit of what we're talking about, but, again, Juju, I'm spot on with you there. I think Juju proved to me, and I know Big Ben was not there, and that was hard, but he's really a really good, awesome number two. He's not a number one. So, yeah, can Chase Claypool come and be that guy? Like I said, I have never seen too many people in all my life around football that are like Chase Claypool. I really think he has a chance to be a superstar. But also to throw into that conversation, the tight end play. Eric Ebron is there. Vance McDonald, they're good too. So I throw them into that mix as just at least as far as weapons are concerned in the pass game that make that receiving core a little bit better. But your questions are real. I think they have the potential to be a top third, though, maybe by the end of the year, as I think is what you're saying, but we got to just see it on the field.
Especially with Ben back.
Yes.
Especially with Ben back.
Right.
It may change everything having Ben back. A great quarterback can make a receiving core a lot better than it otherwise would be perceived as performing at. All right, offensive line. Top third, middle third, bottom third. We've got Alejandro Villanueva, who's been an anchor there at left tackle, Stefan Wisniewski at left guard, Marquise Pouncey at center, David DeCastro right guard, and Matt Feller at right tackle. Where would you put that offensive line right now? In year two, without the
Mike
offensive line
Munchak.
coach, the Hall of Famer, Mike Munchak.
Right.
I was thinking Mike Mularkey. Mike Munchak is now in Denver for the second year. And without him, it's been different. Where do you put them?
I think middle third. I think 2 years ago, like when we had the end of the Le'Veon Bell era, Pittsburgh was in the conversation for the best offensive line in the NFL. But, guys have aged. Yeah. Pouncey's getting up there. Villanueva's getting up there. David DeCastro is still a really good guard, but again, the other guys, yeah, good players, but this is not like the dominant front we saw a few years ago where Le'Veon Bell could have a hole and then Ben Roethlisberger, could have time to, sit back there and pat the ball and wait for Antonio Brown to run some 30-yard intricate route or something like that. Yeah, right now I think they're middle of the pack, which we saw also affect their run game and things like that. They're kind of at that time where they're going to have to start thinking about retooling their offensive line, getting it a little younger and start it up again here, because I think they're, coming down to the end of the shelf life for this offensive line here very soon.
And here's the thing. When they won 2 Super Bowls with Roethlisberger as the quarterback, their offensive line was clearly bottom third.
Right.
It was horrible. It was amazing that they were able to get it together and play well and win playoff games and win Super Bowls with an offensive line that was that bad. It was only, in the past several years since Mike Munchak or Mike Mularkey showed up in Pittsburgh that they started to have a great offensive line. So, it's still in that range where it's good enough, especially because the rest of the team, especially the defense, is getting back to what it used to be. The Steelers went through a stretch where they were heavily skewed toward the offense after being years of skewed toward the defense, and now it's balancing out more. So the offensive line doesn't have to be elite and dominant. It can be middle of the pack, and that can be good enough. And let me flip over to the front 7 on that defense. Top third, middle third, bottom third for that group.
Oh, I mean, top third all the way. There's no, stopping me with that comment there. I mean, to me, it's easy. It's really almost like, is it a top 5? And I think it's really into that conversation too, right, Mike? I mean, when you start to get into it, yeah, they lost Javon Hargrave. That stinks. They got Chris Wormley from the Baltimore Ravens. He'll be able to fill that role. He's pretty damn good. Stephon Tuitt, Cam Hayward. I mean, maybe the best pass rush duo in football, in my opinion, a la the draft earlier this week with Dupree and Watt. And then the middle linebackers and Vince Williams and Bush, the first-round pick for – I mean – damn, that is special. I mean, it really is. They can do whatever you want. That can hunker down and stop the best offensive line on 4th and 1, or they can get after the quarterback and, harass him all day in the pass game. So definitely in that top 5-ish conversation for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. The strength of the team now, the reason why they were still alive into late December last year and almost achieving one of the most unlikely playoff appearances in recent history with that offense that was in shambles without Roethlisberger, Bell, and Brown, and nobody to really step up and fill the void. The defense has filled that void. So the defensive line, I agree with you, clearly top third, if not top 5 in the NFL when you factor in the front 7 as well. Secondary, where would you put them? And for years when the defense was great, the secondary was okay. The cornerback play was never over the top,
right.
Not since Rod Woodson. Great safety play. Right now, where would you put that quartet of members of the secondary?
I think realistically, it's middle third in the NFL. You of course they got 2 really good safeties. I mean, Minkah Fitzpatrick can be a superstar, and we saw what he can do last year. Joe Hayden, still a solid player. They got a lot of good at corner, no great. I don't look at Joe Hayden as being great anymore, this lockdown guy. But to me, this is where it's a little tricky. So talent-wise, I would go, yeah, I really think it's a middle of the third talent-wise secondary. But with the scheme and what they do creatively, and then to mix and match the front 7 at times, it makes their secondary a lot better. There's no doubt about that. And they do some off-the-cuff crazy things where, Mike, you and I could sit down and watch film, and 7 out of 10 plays, we could sit there and go, I'm not sure. What do we call this coverage? I don't know what the hell this is, this blitz, why this guy's dropping here. They voided this area. So they're a game plan specific type defense that way, and they use a little trickeration to help out their secondary, which is why they can get away with a middle third secondary, in my opinion.
The arrival of Minka Fitzpatrick last year, when he was the first one to say in Miami, I want out, I want off this sinking ship, and he never felt like he was used right by the Dolphins. The Steelers pounced, and he's on track to becoming that next great Steelers defensive player in the secondary, the heir to a Troy Polamalu, dating back to the guys like the Troy Woodsons of the world, the Carnell Lakes of the world. I mean, great defensive backs that they've had, and it's never been across the board great, but it doesn't need to be. When your front seven, it can be as suffocating as the Steelers has been from time to time over the past 30 years. You don't need to have Hall of Famers across the board, and I think they're good enough. And they're right on the fringe for me of between middle third and top third.
Right.
And I have a feeling that at the end of the season, we're going to be putting them in the top third based upon how this team plays. All right, best case, worst case, Pittsburgh Steelers 2020, go.
Whoa. Best case? Best case, Super Bowl. Yeah. Best case, right? Like, I certainly, like, if we're sitting here in early February and we're going, oh, the Pittsburgh Steelers and Ben Roethlisberger back in the Super Bowl, I'm not going to be like, oh, my gosh, I would have never thought this day was going to happen. This defense is a Super Bowl defense. Big Ben staying healthy. Offensive line we talked about. It's an aggressive system. They need some of those weapons. Yeah, I'll say that. That's the utmost. Now, the floor, Mike, the floor to me is, man, like maybe last year. Just they got to win week 17 to get in the playoffs, and they don't get in. I think that's, to me, as worse as it can get. But, like, I sit here and go, I think I'm going to be surprised that the Pittsburgh Steelers aren't in the playoffs this year. I know that much.
Yeah, look, I think you're right. The best case is the Super Bowl. The worst case is the 7 seed, because I think and again, that extra spot is going to make all the difference in the world in December. There's going to be teams alive that we didn't think were alive. It's going to be a scramble for that last spot, even if that team ends up being cannon fodder for the 2 seed. And there will be a time when the 7 seed beats the 2 seed because there's no bye week for the 2 seed anymore. So I think at a minimum they're in. I think this is the first team, and it helps that we're getting toward the top 10. I think this is the first team where we've agreed that the worst case scenario is still playoffs.
Yeah, right. I'm saying the worst case is just missing out, I
think the worst case is 7 seed. If there were only 6, it would be just missing out. With 7, I think they're getting in, even if everything that happened last year happens again this year.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.